Hi everybody and welcome back to Cozy Cards and Crystals. My name is Joanna and today it's time for another VR, this time to really old VR that Don Michel did a few months ago, I think. It was way back when I watched it and I really loved the idea and I immediately had some decks in mind that would fit in this category. So this VR is called Dealbreaker decks. And this is basically all about decks that you have in your collection and that you love to work with and want to keep in your collection, even though they have some factors to them or some things to them that would normally be deal breakers for you. Of course, I will have the link to the original video by Dawn Michelle in the video description below so that you can watch hers and maybe get a little bit more of an idea of what she was thinking and talking about. Without further ado, let's start with showing you guys my deal breaker decks. The first one is the Muse Tarot. And this is a deck that I really love and that will stay in my collection and is already in my collection for a long time. But it does some things that would normally bother me. But there's something to this deck that makes up for it. And the deal breaker that I'm talking about right here is when a deck actually switches between landscape and portrait images. But when a deck mixes them together, it's distracting and it's annoying. Because then when you lay out the cards, you have like, well, this one I have to lay out like this, and this one I have to lay out like this, and it looks totally chaotic. And also that flipping and turning to be able to see what's on the card, it's just annoying. The thing with this deck is that all of the king cards, which are called muses, are landscape and the rest is basically portrait. So it's only 4 cards that are different. But for some reason with this deck, it's not bothering me too much, or I don't know, it's just I don't care. I still love to work with it, and it doesn't make me don't want to use this deck. So that is the first one. Next deal breaker for me is with Oracle decks. When Oracle decks do the thing where they put a title on the card but no keywords, and the title is so vague or abstract or like a title of a fantasy book that you're like, well, that's totally cool, but what are you trying to say to me? Or how does this title make sense with the question that I've asked or with my everyday life context? Or you just don't have a clue at all. Um, like, for example, the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit oracle. I mean, it makes sense to have the name of the animal on here, so it's not like with some other oracles where you get like titles that could be titles of a fairy tale book but not serve as a keyword or as a message from a card that you try to interpret or get answers from. Here it makes sense to have the name of the animal, but that's it, you don't get any keywords. And normally that would bother me. And there are a lot of decks out there that I really love the imagery on it, or I love the topic. But then I see like, well, it's one of those decks that has these fantasy titles on the cards that don't tell me anything at all. Or they have some concepts on there that say nothing to me because I'm not familiar with them. And so I wouldn't be able to use the cards in a reading without referencing or looking at the guidebook. This deck is an exception to that rule because it is one of a few animal decks that I really love. I love the artwork, I love the colors, I love the choices of animals that I put in here. And so what I did is I actually added the keywords and used the white border around, so the white border around the image actually has a use and makes sense. And so now I can use it without looking at the guidebook, and I have an immediate um, knowing what the cards are actually meaning when I do reading. And this is also one of a deck that I showed in the first episode of my card change deck mods extreme. As an example for that, where I put some keywords on the card so that I'm actually able to using them. So if you want to see that video, I will have it linked below or maybe in the end card. Pretty similar to this is Oracle decks or Tarot decks where I have to use the guidebook. Maybe it's because there are these more abstract and vague titles on them and no keywords that make sense to me, or it's because in the guidebook there's a lot more information that isn't even covered with the imagery and the words on the card that you would totally miss. Or it's because it's a deck that is based on a system, a tradition, a topic where I'm not an expert in, where I'm a total noob. And so I would have to heavily rely on the guidebook for it to even make sense or get what they were talking about. And for me, I don't like that so much because when I'm in a reading, I don't want to put the cards, have the cards out, and I'm like, well, what does that say to me? I want to be able to get immediate phrases in my head, messages in my head, an immediate clue about what the card might be talking, an immediate reaction or feeling. And that is just not the case when I don't have a clue what that card is showing or talking or saying. This deck is an exception to that rule. This is the Divine Muses Oracle, I think it is called. This is out of print. But with this one, I actually love using the guidebook with. So I use it primarily on its own, not paired up with any tarot and other oracle. I just pull one card and then work with that energy and read the complete entry in the guidebook, which is a pretty deep entry with a lot of information, a really good writing. So I basically use this more like a book oracle, so to speak. And it doesn't bother me with this deck at all. Another thing is black and white decks, and I will do a complete video on my black and white decks that are in my collection currently and that have actually managed to convince me to keep them. There are only a handful of those because black and white images or cards bore me in a way. But a few exceptions to that rule are in my collection that have managed to convince me, that have managed to keep my excitement high, and where I don't have that feeling of being bored or that they feel like flat to me or like they're asleep or they're not finished or incompleted. And this is one exception to the rule. This is the Tarot of the Abyss by Anna Turian. And Anna manages with her line work and her artwork to convince me without having a hint of a color in these cards at all. They still feel alive. They still feel like there is something happening here. They still feel like action and movement, and they still evoke some feelings and still feel touching and complete. And so this is one of the few exceptions to that rule. Another thing is when I'm just not able to shuffle a deck without being annoyed. And I'm primarily an overhand shuffler. But with overhand shuffling, this deck, for example, this is the Wild Unknown Archetype deck. First of all, these cards are huge, and the fact that they are a round shape doesn't make it a lot easier or helps the deck in any way, shape, or form. Second of all, because they're round and huge, they're pretty hard to manage, but I still would be able to manage it. But then the cards just stick together in these chunks. And it doesn't matter how fast I shuffle or how tight I grip these cards and press them together or not. When I overhand shuffle it and really grab every single card, they still manage to shuffle in these chunks. And you can see, even when I try to put them together, you have these chunks right here. And since I'm an overhand shuffler, first of all, I don't feel like I get a good mix or shuffle within these cards. Second of all, it really annoys me when I really have to grip and work hard. It's almost like doing a workout when shuffling these cards, trying to get a good mix in there. Here, look at how these chunk together. And you still don't have a good mix of cards, even though you struggle and put all the hard work in. And it's just annoying. And then, since I'm also working with jumpers, with this deck it's almost impossible to get a jumper because they're so gripping to each other that there won't that it's just not possible for one card to jump out. But I still love this deck so much. The artwork, the archetypes that are in here. It is actually a deck that I use regularly because this is the oracle deck that I use for every new moon reading. That is assigned to new moon energy or dark moon energy. And I love how it reads. But the shuffling, man, if this wouldn't be this specific deck, if this would be any other deck that didn't call to me as much as this one does, or didn't read as good as this one does for me, it would be like culled out of my collection at least a few times right now. The other thing that I don't like is when tarot decks change the suit names or change the names of the court cards, because oftentimes I'm struggling to remember which is which. The exception to the rule is this one, is the Mesquite Tarot. It's also out of print, I think. And man, the struggle is real. This one has renamed the court cards. And I can't tell you for how many years I already have this deck in my collection, really for years. And I have used this regularly. And every time I use it again and a court card comes up, I can't for the heck of me remember which is which. I always have to look it up in the guidebook. So it renamed them to student, leader, knower, and novice. And I can't remember which is which. Now again, I would have to take the guidebook out and look. Even though they're not like super abstract or unusual titles, I think these are also titles or renamings that others have used. And for you, it might make complete sense. And you're like, how dumb can you be? I don't have this deck and I already know which is which. But for me, I can't remember. Maybe I just have to put a sticky note in there with just having the names of the chord cards and what they are, so that I don't have to put the guidebook out every time or go get up and get the guidebook. And just when I use this deck, get the cards out, put my sticky note on there, and that's it. Actually, a pretty simple idea to solve the problem. I don't know why I haven't done this one already. But this is an exception to the rule. I love its simplicity. I love the mini size of the cards. I love the artwork. I love how it shuffles. I love how it reads. So it definitely will stay. The last deal breaker that I want to talk about is cards that use the fronts of the cards and the back of the cards. So what I mean by that is they have the image and illustration on the front, and then they have the title, keyword, message, whatever on the back. I know that some of you guys here on TarotTube love that because they're like, well, I don't have to carry around the guidebook all the time. I have everything I need within the cards already. For me, it's just the way my brain works. It's like completely overwhelmed by that or confused because I want to see the image, but I also want to at least have maybe not the full message, but at least have the title or the keyword being visible at the same time, so that I have a jumping off point with the keyword and then the image and what that means or triggers within me as well. And so my brain is like, which side do I want to have facing me? The image, but then I don't have the keyword and the association. Or this one where I have the message and the keyword available to me right now, but I'm not able to see the image. And I want to see the image because I want to see what comes up because of the image, because of the symbology, the colors, whatever the case it is. And so I'm like, I'm struggling. I'm like, which side? It's just an annoying thing, and it's a really personal thing and subjective thing for me. This is one exception to that rule. This is the Fauna Inspiration Illumination cards. I just love the cardstock. I love the imagery. I love the animals that she has in here. I love the messages that she put on the back. And so I live with that, but it's annoying. Also, when you try to show it, it's like, well, which way? It takes double the time because you have to show the images, but you also have to show at least the keyword. So you have to show two sides for the same card. And for some, that might not be a problem at all. They're like, well, what's your problem? Like, just look at the image, turn the card around, look at the keyword. You can remember the keyword and then look at the image again and have that one face up. It's not a problem at all. You just make it a problem when no problem is existing. But my brain is just weird like that. So this is it. These were my deal breaker decks and a VR that is long overdue. If you have done a VR to this, or if you want to take part, leave a comment down below so that I'm able to watch your VR, or that we can share what our deal breakers are if you feel like we have some of them in common, or if you have totally completely different deal breakers. I would love to know. Also, give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new here or if you haven't already, or that you don't miss any of the new videos that are coming up here on my channel. And thank you for watching and taking your time to share it with me and my content. Until next time. Bye, guys.